The Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, April 17, 2023 will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent. Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent. Mr. Schron. Mr. Schron is absent. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Turner.
Here.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Sweeney is in attendance.
Thank you very much. And item number 3 is public comment. Has anybody signed in?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Item number 4 is approval of the minutes from the March 6, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. I'll let the clerk sort out. They came in all at once. So any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. And the minutes are approved, and matters referred to committee are none, and our discussion item is on the ERP. We haven't received an update on the ERP in quite some time, and I thought it was time that we did so. I particularly want to focus on 4 things today. The first one is as to what modules have been completed and what things are planned but still remain to be done since our last major go live when we started the WFM and time management and payroll processes at essentially the same time. The second is about the upcoming considerations about upgrading the Infor version. The third is where we are on determining what benefits or savings or efficiencies we may have obtained so far, and where we are with user adoption among the various departments, and whether the departments have taken full advantage of the available functionalities or whether there still remains a way to go. So with those general questions put out there, I'm going to introduce Director Johnson to make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Finance Committee for this opportunity. We're always excited to talk about what we have going on in information technology, and I'm very happy that we have some recipients that actually want to hear what we're doing in IT. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I know it's a sacrifice for you, and I know you're doing it on behalf of citizens of Cuyahoga. Bring that up. All right, my name is Andy Johnson. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Cuyahoga County. And let me see if we get this going here. And of course, I'm having technology trouble. Got this, Jim? Oh, was that me? All right, fantastic. All right, so sorry about that. Chairman Miller, I hope I captured your asks of myself on what you wanted to see during this session. And what we'll talk about on the Infor ERP, you mentioned the modules completed, and that'll be the first topic we talk about is what we're implementing in terms of new modules, where we're at, what we've accomplished, and what we hope to accomplish in the very near future. And when we think of modules, we broaden that a little bit to talk about the functions, because things don't always fit nice and tidy into a module. So we'll talk about a little bit about the functions. You also mentioned about the upgrade, and that is something that we will talk about. I'll give you a status of that upgrade. But I know that, Chairman, we were in discussions. You also had some questions about the RFI, and I'm prepared to talk about that coming up. Next thing is, what are the various departments taking advantage of inside of our ERP? And I refer to that as leveraging our ERP across the county. Who's using it? What are we using it for? What are some of the exciting things that we're doing with our new ERP? And then finally, operational savings that you had mentioned. And that will be something that we'll wrap up the conversation with. And when we talk about that, operational savings is something that we're always looking for. We're looking for efficiencies. We're looking for ways to do things with less, do more with less. And I refer to that as optimizing. And optimizing is something that we are never really done with, that we're always trying to find ways to optimize. So we'll be talking about that in our session. So hopefully, Chairman Miller, this covers what you were after. And if not, we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. But to get us started, I would like to introduce you to a gentleman that has been very integral into the development, the rollout, the advancement of our ERP, and that is Bob Knoll. Bob is our Deputy Chief Information Officer for Applications. Bob was part of the team that brought ERP across the finish line. Bob left the county for a while, so one of the first things I had to do was go back and talk him into coming back, which you may remember was a big event. And thankfully Bob did, and he was a real reason why we were able to get the ERP across the finish line. So Bob will give you an overview of the modules that we have implemented and where we stand with those. But before Bob starts, I just wanted to give a little bit of context on where we're at in the timeline. It was about a year ago that we actually rolled out payroll for all 7,000 county employees. So we've been sitting on that about a year now. And I have to say that it has gone, I think, really well. I mean, we're looking at, I would say above 98, 99% in terms of performance of getting people's paychecks to them accurately. And so, but this past year has been a year of stabilization within payroll. It's been a year of stabilization within WFM, which is our timekeeping system. And WFM, the last rollout was in July of 2022. So, just wanted to give you that context of where we've been, where we're going. And so when Bob starts to talk about what we've accomplished, it's really been as part of the stabilization of payroll, we've been able to roll out some of these additional modules and additional functionality. So with no further ado, I'd like to present Bob. And this, I've figured out my technical difficulties. Thanks, Bob.
Yep. Good afternoon. Robert Knoll, Deputy Chief Information Officer for Applications. So as Andy mentioned, we're going to talk about what we've accomplished kind of since we went live with payroll. And there's a lot of things on your screen. I'm going to go through some in detail. We have some screenshots and some pictures to show you as well. So we're going to start with home pages. Home pages went live in October of 2022. It's a module that we had paid for through Infor, and it was something that we decided to use to help with some communications. I'll get into some more details on the next slide. But it allows us to communicate across the county in a singular platform. Infor Go is a mobile app, just like you'd have on your cell phone. Once again, free to everybody here. You can download it, you can get information, you can actually use some functionality inside of the ERP, inside of that as well, right on your device. It's actually a good way for us to get information to people quickly. In February of this year, we updated the job board. We call it the candidate experience. It allows candidates, people outside of the county looking for jobs, to actually apply in a little cleaner way. There's also some benefits there for the ADA side of things as well that I'll get into. Sherpa is our budgeting tool. So the Sherpa payroll projections went live just in March of this year. It allows us to integrate the payroll data into Sherpa. We've done some system upgrades. Those are standard throughout any software application. So Lawson is our financial and payroll system. GHR is our HR system, and you can see we've done several of those, September, October, and December. Very common for us to take upgrades. That's potential fixes to the system. It's also new enhancements or functionality as well. Electronic W-2s in January. Federal mandate that we provide W-2s to all employees. That actually finished up at the end of January of last year. And point 7 is now we're sending a lot of data. We're interfacing data to HHS, to the sheriff. We're taking that data now that's in a central repository, and we're pushing it out now to other areas, so they're actually using that data too. It's a really good way for us to have data consistency. So as you can see there, HHS in September, sheriff in March.
On that data, what kind of data are we talking about?
Good question. So it depends on the specific application, but HHS has asked us for some employee data. They were trying to track where employees were working, what building they were working in. A lot of it is based on their title or who they report to. So it's a lot of organizational structure pieces. The sheriff data was actually pushed for their learning management system that they've rolled out for the corrections officers. They've also asked for data for one of their internal applications for internal affairs. So all the data that we push outside of the ERP to a different agency is always approved by whoever owns the actual data. So in this case, this would be HR data. So when we get a request, we obviously work through that with the directors of those areas to make sure that they understand exactly what data is leaving, where it's going, is it securely going there, who has access to it, and what they're using it for. Okay, so let's look at some screenshots here, if I can get this to work. Okay, so this is homepages. Homepages, as you can see on the right-hand side, it's a graphical way. We can add pictures, we can add text. It's a one-stop shop for county communications, and it's owned and maintained by the communications team. So even though this is an ERP module, access, all the content is actually owned by and presented by the communications team. So this was a big win for the IT department because this is the first module where an area really took hold of it, and they present all the information. So the screenshot that's here had some things from Election Day and things like that. Today there's information for the various events that we're trying to raise money throughout the county. It also allows the employees access to pay stubs, W-2s, direct deposits, all that important information for the employees. And it gives them an ability to get to Ask HR, which is a way for them to ask questions if they have an HR-specific question, and then also the county jobs as well. So the great part about homepages is when you launch the ERP, so if you want to go to enter your time, this is the first page that presents to an employee. So when this pops up to them, they get that information kind of pushed right to them. So instead of them having to go somewhere else or click around, that information that's important is there. In the know is posted on there as well. Things like that. And this changes sometimes throughout the day. Sometimes things statically stay there for a couple of days or for a week. And these little boxes that you can see on the screen can actually be moved around. So as things are more important, so if there's a new in the know, that's pushed up to the top, and something else may be pushed down a little bit. Once again, controlled by the communications team. Yes, sir.
So how would an employee access this page?
So there's two ways. The first way is on a county PC that they would normally work on. The Infor icon, which is on everyone's desktop, which is how they would go and enter their time for their timesheets. Clicking on that icon logs you into the ERP. This is the first page that presents to you. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second way is through the mobile app, which I'll show in a couple seconds. Okay. This is the new candidate space. This went live in February of this year. And our big push for the candidate space was to become more ADA compliant. ADA is Americans with Disabilities Act. And our original job board provided by Infor was a little out of date. It was very text-based, not a lot of images, not a lot of color, didn't really draw you in. The new job board, which once again was provided by Infor, is a little bit more lively. You can put pictures, you can put videos, we can modify language, and we can target the advertising through specific videos. If we're trying to hire corrections officers, we can place a video on that main screen that may tell a candidate or a potential candidate why it would be great to work at Cuyahoga County to be a corrections officer. So once again, another great enhancement for us. We've received a lot of good feedback on the way that people have applied for jobs. Once again, the tracking is great. We can also see when people are clicking into things and tracking those as well. But it's moving us to a more user-friendly version of a job board. with the added benefit of the ADA compliance.
So I have two questions on
Yes, sir.
this. If I were someone out there in the community looking to apply for a county job, how would I get to this page?
It's a great question. So on the Cuyahoga County's website, you can search for jobs. So if you go right to our normal cuyahogacounty.us website, there's an HR link. I believe it's on the main page, or you can just search for jobs or positions or job opportunities, and it will take you directly to this page.
And the second question is, if I were a person in this position, how would I even know to look for this page?
It's a great question. That's something that we're trying to partner with our HR and our talent teams on actually trying to advertise more that this page is available. The nice part about this page specifically is that I can link to a very specific job. If I was hiring a person on my team, I can go on my social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera, and I can link directly to the job board or to my specific position. So those are better ways that we're trying to advertise that these positions are actually available. So I think there's always opportunity for us to advertise more of our open positions and the technology we have and the opportunities we have here. But I think this is a step in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you. And thanks for your presentation. Just back on the regular person wants a job in the city of Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
You only have so much room on the homepage, but I think that's one of the top questions that I get. And my answer is, I don't know. Just go on the homepage and figure it out. And once you find something that meets your criteria, let me know and I'll see if I can advance it. That's my standard. But I'd love to be able to say through the chair, the right-hand bottom where there's a circle that says job, just hit that and it'll take you there. And I'm far from an IT, but I think to get it more simple, that would be something that I think would be pretty cool and easily shared by me to whoever's asking. And so that's just
Absolutely.
a thought.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we're working through is how to take this technology and how to get that out on the website itself so that people can easily, know the jobs that are available and how to apply for them easier. And that's some of the feedback that we've always received too. It's difficult to find the jobs that are available, and it's difficult to apply for those jobs. But I agree with you. I think if there's a better way, if there was a link on that main page, on our main county page, it'd be easy for any of us to say, very simply, go to cuyahogacounty.us, top right-hand corner, there's a button that says apply here, something like that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to ask that question.
Okay, thank you. So the other way that we can get to home pages and information from the county is what we call Infor which is a mobile application. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, a smart device, you can download this application. It's no cost to the person to actually download it. And what this allows us to do is integrate with home pages. So that same information you would see on your computer screen actually is right on your device. So it sizes to fit your device. So if you're on a tablet or a phone, it'll size and allow you to scroll through it. And it also allows you to access My Time as well. So you can see the two pictures that I've included there. The left-hand side is home pages. The right-hand side is My Time. And it allows you to submit time off requests. Timesheet employees can actually clock in and clock out. It's all tracked by location, things like that. And we're going to continue to add features and functionality to this app as well. So one of the big pushes that I had a couple months ago was trying to figure out better ways to use the technology we have. The mobile app is a great way. We all know that, well, most people have their device with them at all times. So how can we push massive communications to people? So this is a great way to use home pages. Also with My Time being interfaced as well, it allows people to actually opt in and then use that technology as well.
Chairman, could I ask a question?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Chair, to Mr. Knoll. So I'm only down here a day or two a week. And I have a cell phone, but it's not a county cell phone. Can I still do this on my personal cell phone?
You can. It's an app that's available to anybody. You can download it on your county device if you have it. You can download it on your personal device as well if you choose to do so. your county device, if you had one, it is actually being pushed to it. So it's actually kind of there by default. Personal device, since it is your device, you have to download it yourself. There are documentation available on how to actually download the application and authenticate it so you can actually log in as yourself as well.
So where am I going to find that?
So I believe it's on homepages as well. I can send it to you. I can send it to everybody directly as well, just so we'd all have it. It might be interesting information. But I believe it's on homepages as well to get to that. Might be a little hidden at this point because we've kind of had this out there for a couple months now. But I will provide it to the entire group here, the documentation that we have on how to do that.
Okay, one more, please. So, would I have to go to the computer that's up in my office to get that to somehow send this to my cell phone, or?
No. You can actually go, I don't know if you have an Android or an iPhone, an Android. So you would go to your, I think it's the Google Play Store, and you can actually download it right from there, just like you would if you wanted to download ESPN or something like that. Same general concept. And then you'd actually set up and authenticate that way.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
continue.
Okay, so this one isn't as pretty from a picture standpoint, but it's data, and I'm a data-driven person. So this is our W-2 electronic opt-in. So W-2s were provided. Employees were given the option to opt into electronic delivery of their W-2. So they could go to a website, log in, and actually download their W-2. So it would just be a PDF that they could print, or it was actually printed for them if they chose to not opt in. So right around the end of the month of January, we provided the printed copies of W-2s to everyone. And as you can see, since that time, we continue to have people opting in to getting them electronically. So what we've seen is that people received a printed copy of their W-2, myself included, and then after, I opted in as well. So I downloaded a PDF of my W-2. So they were printed originally, they were mailed. There was that delay with the mail. I wanted to try to file my taxes earlier, so I actually went on, opted in, and now I downloaded it. So now I'm opted in. And you can see that even though at the end of January we were around 3,100 people, we're approaching 4,000, which is great. So next year, as we continue to see this trend go upward, we shouldn't have to print as many W-2s for employees, which should be a cost savings, and it's going to be a convenience for people as well. Those W-2s will actually be available potentially sooner than they would arrive to you in the mail, because once they're available, you can actually download them. Yes, sir.
So if somebody wants to opt in to do their W-2 electronically, how do you do that?
So it's right on homepages again. I'm going to continue to point everybody back to homepage. That's my little baby where all the information is. Once again, I can provide it to the group here if anybody would like to have that. But there are instructions available for the employees on how to do that. It's also been sent out in email several times. It's also been in the know. We work with the communications team to push that out as well. We think this is a really great way for people to get information faster. W-2s, everybody's really anxious to get their taxes filed. This is a way to get that information potentially a few days earlier.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you. Just on the opt-in, I kind of did the same thing. I waited for the mail, and then I opted in. And next year when it happens again, because there was a focus on it this year, opt in, opt in, opt in. And as time goes on, I think you're not going to have as much advertisement to opt in because the system is moving in the direction. But I can see where next year people are going to I didn't get in the mail because I opted in and I forgot to go, and how do I get on to get here? So I'm calling somebody. Are you prepared for that for next year?
Absolutely, yeah. We will send out, at the end, we do a lot of these things. Even for open enrollment for benefits, we send out reminders, update your address, update your beneficiaries. Toward the end of the year, our plan is to re-communicate how to opt in and to remind people if you opted in last year that you will not receive a printed copy of it. We will also give them instructions on how to access their W-2 again so that just like you and I did, we did it after the fact. It's been several months. We might have forgotten that we will remind people how to get to those things.
And just to follow up, will you notify the individual, including me, that hey, by the way, you're opted in and you're not going to be getting one?
That's a great question. I don't know if we can do it through the system, but let me take a look. If that's something that we think would be helpful, we'll take a look at it.
I think that just for the people that fall in my category of, and that would train me and push me to actually not ask somebody to do it for me. So I can go in there myself, and it's just reluctant or resistant more than reluctant.
Yeah,
And
no,
once I
agreed.
get programmed to do something, I'll be able to be trained that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, great idea. And just another side note too, that website where the W-2 is actually living or available is the same place as our pay stubs. So most employees are going there anyways to retrieve their pay stubs every other week. So we're using the same technology, the same portal to a point to get them to see their pay stubs. But I agree. I think any communication and reminding is helpful so that we don't have that influx of questions at the end of January next year.
Just out of the blue, why does the password change so much?
When you log into the computer?
Yeah.
It's a security policy. That's just so that, basic, I don't know what our policy is now. I'm not the security person, but
think
it's just to make sure that, we do, in case somebody were to obtain your credentials, that it would actually.
It's very important, but for me, it's a little, I don't log in as much as everybody else, and that's just more of a pet peeve. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so moving on. So let's look at what's in progress here. So, we've had some successes, which has been great, and we have a lot of things that are still currently moving as we sit today. So we are working on yet another upgrade for Lawson and GHR. That's our financial and payroll systems. Our goal is to be done with that in April of this year, which will get us to the most current version available by Infor. We're working on onboarding automation.
Bless you.
So this is a way for us to take our HR data and actually generate tasks inside of our Sharewell system, which is how we handle ticketing. And it will actually notify us when an employee is hired, transferred or terminated, promoted, things like that, so that we can take the necessary action from an IT perspective. So hypothetically, I have an employee who submits their 2 weeks notice. It'll actually trigger an email. It'll tell the appropriate teams that you should turn off employee X's access on this coming Friday. So it's a way for us to reduce some of the the issues with accounts being active. It also allows us to be notified when people are going to start. So when we have these major hiring events at the sheriff or HHS, hopefully in IT here shortly too, we will know that these people are starting and we can have their access in place before they start. So it's not just a login to a computer or an email address, it's ERP access, it's equipment, it's all of those things that are needed for a new hire. So that's been going on since about September, October of last year, and we're hoping to finish that up in May of this year. Enterprise Asset Management, EAM, that's the tool that Public Works primarily uses. We're working through inventory on the sanitary side. We're hoping to have that done using that application in May of this year. Absence Management is an HR module that we're hoping to have also completed in May. So as you can see, the team is starting to diverge, a lot of things happening in different areas. We've partnered with the fiscal department, and they've really taken the lead on the non-executive agency accounts payable areas. So when accounts payable went live in 2020, it was more focused on the executive agencies. So the fiscal department really took it upon themselves to start to look at and talk to these other agencies and start to have them actually access the system as well. So you can see that big list of different department agencies that have finished, workforce development finishing on 4/17. So that moves accounts payable from people potentially here doing that data entry to actually having those agencies do it. And then our last piece on here is accounts payable and invoice automation, which we're calling APIA. We're hoping to kick that off in July, and that will also help with some of the complaints, some of the issues we've had with invoices not being paid timely. We're hoping that that will help us and start to move us in a direction where we actually have visibility to those invoices as soon as they're sent into the different mailboxes or different teams. So obviously a lot going on over the next couple months.
So could you say a little bit more about absence management?
Absolutely. Absence management is more than just tracking people on FMLA. It's really making sure that people are in the correct status inside of GHR. It's primarily used for FMLA to make sure that people are in the correct status and tracking their hours. But it's a module inside of the HR system. HR will own the data behind it, and they're primarily going to use it to verify if an employee is eligible to go on FMLA, or if they have multiple FMLAs to track their hours. So it is not to show that Bob used 8 hours of FMLA on this day per se. It's to track the buckets of time and to verify that employee statuses are correct inside of the system, inside of the HR system.
Thank you.
So with that, we also have a lot of stuff that's still going to be coming. These are going to be kind of higher level things because a lot of these things are still discussed. And I want to call out the text that hopefully is in red on your screen or on your printout as well. And a lot of these things are going to be tied to our new HR director confirming our timelines and establishing the priorities. But these are the things that we have kind of in the hopper per se to move forward. So compensation, which we'll be looking at primarily step and grade and compensation and the way that we handle those things here inside of the HR system. We're hoping to start around July. Employee safety, which is health and safety management, right around August. These dates may change slightly. We're going to take a major WFM or My Time upgrade. We're targeting the end of the year. There's some setup that we need to work with Infor on to get us in the right direction there. Once again, more EAM inventory modules. And then as you can see, 5A through J are a lot of other opportunities that Human Resources has mentioned to us. And we're going to wait on the new HR director to tell us what order we'd like them to be in so we can start to work through these. The good part is they're all available to us. There's some research and some setup there, but we're confident that we can move relatively quickly through these once we have the order established and buy-in from the business teams.
Okay.
Okay, and I think at this point I will call Andy back up. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you, Bob, and I hope you got a sense of what we've been working on, not only stabilizing the WFM and the payroll, but keeping and moving the ball forward. I took a couple notes there, particularly from Councilman Sweeney on some ideas, and we'll be sure to follow up on those. So moving ahead, one of the items that Chairperson Miller asked me to talk about was where we're at with the upgrade. And when we were talking back in the heat of the implementation, we had always talked about an upgrade. Now, as I was sitting back and listening to Bob mentioned the word upgrade several times, but what we're talking about here is a slightly different upgrade. We collect patches. We can collect patches for the latest version of particular modules that we're on. But when we talk about the upgrade, we're talking about moving versions of software. And so this chart's a lot, and I'd like to walk you through it to give you a picture of when we talk about the upgrade, what we're talking about. And if we look at the column titled module, those are the Infor modules as we think about them in IT. They are distinct pieces of applications. So we always talk about Infor, but we've mentioned before that Infor is a collection of packages. And these are the packages as we go down that column. You can see, and we've mentioned them before, workforce management, Lawson, landmark, learning management. These are all the different modules that we have inside of our Infor package. So I want to take just a moment to talk about what tenant means and why that's important. You may have heard the term single tenant versus multi-tenant. And single tenant is the idea where we are on Infor servers, but we're the only one that is on that particular server with that particular version of the software. In some state cases, that's good. We control it. But there's this big risk, and we've seen that risk, where we fall behind on patches, right? We have to plan it out. We have to organize it. We have to figure out what's coming and how do we manage that for across the county. The trend in the industry is to go to a multi-tenant situation where it is you are on a version of the software with many other customers. Now, that sounds scary. It sounds like our data is going to be all intermingled. It's not. We're all secure in our data. But now what happens in a multi-tenant environment is those program patches and those fixes come on a regulated basis, right? We have the opportunity to test it, but we have to stay caught up. It's very similar to your iPhones are probably automatically updating. You don't even know what's happening. Similar idea, although we will do testing and we will work around that. So it's important to understand this multi-tenant versus single tenant because that's coming as we migrate towards a multi-tenant environment. But the next thing I want to point out is the latest version, and that's the second column here. So when we talk about Lawson, we talk about the version that we're on, and we are on version 10 of Lawson. And that is not the latest version. We are behind. We knew that. We talked about that in previous meetings. But this is where we are going to do the upgrade, and we're going to go to version 11, or potentially go to version 11. Now, as I reflect back on history, I mentioned something in previous meetings about that the time horizon was something like 2027, something like that, where we'd have to make a move. Infor just came back and announced that they will extend support till 2030 for version 10. Now, that doesn't mean that's something we want to wait around to version, till 2030 to decide what to do. We're going to keep marching forward, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it does give us a little bit more runway to stay on our current version.
So, Director, let's take workforce management, for example, which is listed as single tenant.
Yep.
Do you expect that at some point that that Infor is going to migrate to a version that's multi-tenant and expect us to get on board, and that might take some amount of adjustment?
Yes. So I might even flip it, though, in the sense that we may push to go to the multi-tenant. It is something that is out there right now. So workforce management for many customers is multi-tenant. We are not. So that would be something we would look at, and you're absolutely right. It would take effort.
What you're saying is that Infor already has multi-tenant versions of a lot of these things.
Absolutely, yes.
So that would be a kind of version change in that we would move from our single tenant version to a multi-tenant version of the same functionality.
That's right. And in most cases, that will be something we can handle internally as part of our day-to-day operations of making that move.
And the purpose of doing that would be so that we don't have to depend on Infor to give us individual service on a single tenant system and rather be on a single system with a lot of other on a multi-system with a lot of other users that Infor is going to be a lot more attentive to.
Well, I think that's certainly a big part of it, right? Is letting Infor manage those patches that are coming to us, and then that puts a little pressure on us not to fall behind, right? That we take those, we consume those patches that are coming our way in stride. It becomes part of our day-to-day operations, and with Infor managing that.
And are all of the ones that are listed as single tenant potentially multi-tenant, or are there some where it just doesn't make sense for it to be multi-tenant?
I'm going to take a look at Bob. I believe most of them are multi-tenant. They all could be. Yeah, so they all could be. So those are available.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The upgrade that's going to be required at least by 2030, correct? approximately, what does something like that cost?
So a good question. And I don't have an answer for you. It's not going to be free, certainly. It's going to be in the millions, but it's not going to be like it won't be the conversion that we went through moving from our old legacy systems to Infor. It won't be that kind of effort. So I hesitate to give a number because I don't know what that number is.
How long do you think that that upgrade would last? Do you have, I mean, I know things move rather quickly, but
I would
how long has version 10 been good that we're on now? I mean, when that first started, how long has this version 10 been?
So version 10, I believe, has been the primary version for 5 years. I'll throw that. I don't know specifically, but that's about my understanding is let's just say 5 years. The interesting thing about if we move to version 11, that is the last version upgrade we'll ever need to do. And because once we get to version 11, we get on that cycle of upgrades. And particularly if we go to version 11 multi-tenant, now it's not a huge event like what we're used to. It's just part of our operations. You know, month after month, quarter after quarter, we're consuming those upgrades basically because we have to, but we're always current with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good questions. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of a status from my perspective of where we're at right now with this license management agreement that we're on. So that agreement expires in December of 26. So our agreement is different than the software, right? So we buy some licensing, so we're basically leasing licenses from Infor. That agreement was a 10-year deal that was signed back in 2017, expires in 2026. Currently, it's about $1.3 million. So we're starting to prepare for that. I'm having discussions with the Infor management on what does an extension of that contract look like. What's the fees? What are we going to do? How do we get to multi-tenant? So all those details are currently being worked through. Just as a reminder, midway last year, Infor spun off to a different company, their EAM, which is their Enterprise Asset Management, something that Public Works relies on. We're aware of that, and we're actually putting that in as part of our negotiations. I'll take a pause right there. Any questions on the Infor licensing? All right. So then the RFI, or the request for information. I know Councilman Miller asked me about this in discussions. At the beginning of the year, we issued an RFI, request for information, for an ERP system. And that was, there's a number of reasons for doing that. Primarily at the beginning of the year, it was to understand what the market looked like. We had been with Infor for 10 years, and it was something that I had thought would be a good idea to understand what other options are out there. What are the costs of some of these others? What does an SAP? What does an Oracle? What does a Workday cost in comparison to what we're paying now? But with the new administration in place, the administration, and absolutely to their prerogative, and it's the absolute right thing to do, is taking a look at everything. And ERP being a core piece of how we operate within the county, wants to take a look at that and understand, hey, maybe there's something better out there. Maybe there's something that we can right now take a look at implementing, or pieces to implement, that might align better with where the administration would like to take the county. So I think that there's a number of reasons for pursuing this RFI. I think they all make a lot of sense. They don't obligate us to anything, but it does give us more information, which is the absolute intent. Now, I did let Infor know. I try to operate pretty transparently, and I did let Infor know that this was happening, and they understand why we're doing it, and they understand the process. So it's not going to come as a surprise to them. And so question you may have is, well, I can't possibly imagine that we would go to a new ERP. And I would say that I think that one of the goals that we would do is take a look at what does that business case look like? What is the business case for taking all or pieces of an ERP look like? And that's something we'll have a lot of discussion about. And does that make sense to do? And again, I think it comes back to, is there a solid business case there? And I think there's enough to look at to not commit or deny that there's a good business case. So we'll let the facts talk.
So, how feasible is it to have a system where different vendors have parts of it?
So it's not ideal, but I will tell you that probably every company, public sector entity has some version of that. We have it right now with Infor and with EAM, right? Two separate now packages that we now have to bring back together. Yeah, I think that's part of the business case, right? If we look at taking a piece of one and keep a piece of another, what does that integration look like? And there's expense there, there's problems there, that's where our difficulties will be, and that's all something we'd have to have in the business case, but that's absolutely one of the things we would have to look at if we're doing some sort of partial integration.
I think if you do that, I'm not sure you even have an ERP anymore.
Agreed. It's one of the things. Now, I'm not trying.
I mean, the reason we got into this in 2017 was that we had half a dozen different legacy systems that didn't talk to each other. You know, we certainly don't want to go back that way.
Absolutely understand. And as the leader, I don't want to manage something like that, right?
No,
but if
you don't.
I'm held accountable for the performance of that. So if, we get into a situation where it makes sense to do something like that, again, that's all part of that business case. And then how do we manage it going forward? I understand the concern, something I'm certainly looking at.
Okay. So you're expecting responses from the request for information at the end of the month, so that's coming soon.
Correct. Yep. We've had indications from most of the major players that they're interested.
What other major players are there besides the three you mentioned here?
Well, one that I didn't mention was Microsoft, and Microsoft is a strategic partner of ours in many ways. That's one that I did not list here. So that's the first one that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. And have they indicated they're responding?
Yeah.
They have,
Yep.
Okay.
Again, the RFI does not obligate us.
Okay.
It's just for information.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So one of the questions, Councilman, that you had asked me is what other departments are utilizing the ERP? And I'm not going to read this entire list to you, but when I think of departments, I think of those that use the ERP every single day, right? Fiscal, procurement, treasury, HR, OBM, public works. Those departments are using ERP every day, and every day we're looking for ways to better use it, ways to roll out additional functionality. The big chunks of functionality are done, but there's smaller chunks. Bob talked about a few of the things in the HR area that we're going to look at. I wanted to bring to you, though, your attention to some of the ways that the county is using the ERP. And so, the first one I think we all know, right, is the entire county is right now, 7,200 employees or so, is being paid out of our ERP system. So in that sense, everybody is touching ERP.
So that 7240 number, that includes both executive and non-executive agencies, is
That's
that
exactly
correct?
right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Those employees can access home pages, and Bob spent a little bit of time talking to you. So again, we're talking about every employee in the county there. 74% of our employees are entering their time in WFM. So when we talk about that, that's sort of that hourly recording of time. Most of the in fact, all of the executive agencies are doing some form of that, whether they're swiping a clock or sitting down at a PC and entering it. Some of the other non-exec agencies are sending us a file of their time. So they may be using a different time collection system. So we look at that as an opportunity, that additional 26%, as an opportunity to roll out WFM and maybe replace a legacy system that they have. Sorry, I thought you had a question. All routine accounting accounts payable are happening, and Bob spent a little bit of time talking about all the non-exec agencies that we're rolling accounts payable out to. So all those affected and leveraging ERP. We talk about county procurement. Most routine county procurement is happening through ERP. There's a few special funds, a few special things that are happening that don't happen inside of ERP, minor purchases that don't happen inside of ERP, but they are recorded there eventually. So I look at all the routine procurement through ERP. Contracts managed through ERP. So when you look at the executive contracts that are there, all of those managed inside of ERP. Talked a lot about, Bob talked a little bit about the HR processes. As we keep moving forward with HR, more and more of those processes are going to be managed through the ERP system. In this case, Landmark, we mentioned before. Treasury, all those daily operational events that happen in Treasury through our ERP. Tax bill, exclude the tax bills, right? That's the MVP system there. But again, wow, it's really raining out there. The Treasury doing their day-to-day operationals. Training is something that we haven't talked much before about, but through the learning management system, almost all county training is being done and conducted through LMS. There's a few special opportunities or a few special trainings that aren't done, particularly in the sheriff correction officer space, that aren't done through our LMS, and they have a special system just for that. And then Public Works, right? Using the EAM with their work orders, with their management of inventory. So I hope I gave you a practical sense of how across the county we are leveraging this ERP. The big chunks are taken out. We're just now looking at incremental items, particularly where Bob talked about earlier about some of those things that we're looking at in the future. And we see a big opportunity in the HR space to do more. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions on how we're leveraging ERP.
Yes. Do we have any idea of how much money has been saved in Public Works because of their widespread use of ERP now for management of work orders and inventory?
Yeah, so one of the things, and we'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about what I'll call the optimization piece. One of the problems that we have is this notion of a baseline, and I don't know that we have. And in fact, I even remember in my interview questions that we don't have a great baseline to measure dollars on, and so. I know that's been asked, executives have asked me for that dollar figure. It's not, I wouldn't be comfortable giving a dollar figure because we don't have that baseline. And so I'm going to, for the next slide, we'll talk about where we see other opportunities, where we see other advantages of the ERP, but to give a dollar figure, I can't do it.
Okay, continue. I think I'll have another, question? Yes.
Chairman, Director, just with the ERP, you talk about this department's using it, or 74% or something. Who runs this thing? Is it, we are ERP, we're the administration, and you guys are going to use this tool, or is it each one of the individuals saying, hey, man, let me give it a shot?
Yeah, I think it's so the authoritarian, your first example, Councilman Sweeney, of, hey, you're going to use this, particularly when it goes to NEAs, it's not really the best way to roll out a package, right? We generally like to have a meeting of the minds, right? Hey, we've got this opportunity for you. What do you think? And we start to look at that to say, hey, is there some traction here? Is there an opportunity here? In some cases, the case is overwhelming. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to go with something like that.
And through the chair to my director, I'm just struggling, not struggling, but change is tough, right?
Yeah.
We're the administration. We're one county government with the legislative and administrative branch. And the administrative branch, executive branch, they make a decision. And they made a decision through the help of council. I'm guessing that the ERP is the way we're going to go. So I think everybody should have to, through your guidance, saying this is how it's going to work. And just like me, when I'm resisting going online to go get something, right? If they make it mandatory, I'm going to have to go do it.
That's right.
And it's going to be for the right reason. That's why I'm a little bit hesitating about, let me know if you want to use it in Department X.
Right. And so I will tell you that we have a load of opportunity in front of us, right? And so we can't do all things all the time, as much as we want to do everything.
And I don't have any conceptual of that.
Yeah. And so Bob talked about the list of items that are out there that we're working on. And so right now we're taking, what's the biggest bang for our buck, right? And so we're working down that list with those opportunities, and we see, that slide a couple slides ago is where our huge opportunities are. Yeah. To get the next 26% onto WFM, there's probably a business case there, and we need to look at that. Why is a certain non-exec agency using a time collection system when they could be using the WFM system? Yep, that's a legitimate question, and I think that's something that, as we start clicking off these things, we'll get to that question. So it's really a balance of, hey, this is a really great idea, but do I have the team, do I have enough bandwidth to support that idea? Because right now we're operating, we're 100%, right? I mean, we don't have bandwidth to go take on another project. We'll adjust, right? We'll look at, maybe there's a bigger bang for our dollar if we go to this project rather than the project we may be on or we intended to do. So I think it's that balancing act on what can we consume, what are we capable of as a department versus what makes sense, what makes business sense, and what makes sense across the county.
And through the chair, yeah. Go ahead. I'm just trying to. It's a bandwidth. We know that there's efficiencies out there, and we have this ERP that is crossed the finish line and being implemented, and if we had more bandwidth within your department, we might be able to get there faster, but the reality we have is this is our bandwidth. We're doing very good, and we're going to keep plugging along, realizing efficiencies as, and some of the efficiencies that are completed, we don't have to worry about them anymore because they're working, and then we keep going with the bandwidth that we have.
That's absolutely right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In my view, we are never done. We're never done with ERP, right? I'll get that question. Hey, are you guys done with ERP yet?
But you can be done with one of the module or one of the, this department's done, it's self-sufficient, it's working really well, we're gonna go someplace else, is that?
That's right, but even if it's implemented, right? We've got it in, right? And we think it's in pretty good. Times change, business changes, right?
Got it.
Yeah, let's go back and let's keep evaluating. We've got, in fact, pretty excited, we've got some little user teams that are setting themselves up to look at, hey, how can we use this package better? How can we use it more efficiently, right? So it's in, but how can we use it better? How can we?
Your excitement is kind of infectious, but Mr. Chairman.
So, Director, do you have requests from departments for more uses and more capabilities, more than you can respond to, or are the departments not coming to you very much and saying, we'd like to do this, we'd like to do that using ERP?
So I would say that we are certainly getting requests in. So that's what we call our backlog. That's called, our project list. So generally they come in, simple requests. Hey, we need a report that will tell us this. But there's more complicated requests like, hey, we need to, we need to take a look at the APIA module, a little bit more of a complicated request, a little bigger ask. All those are coming in. And I think as we go forward and we start to stabilize and really look to then optimize our ERP, that's one of the things we start to look at forming like a steering committee, right, within our applications group that says, okay, we've got representatives from 10, whatever the right number is. We've got so much bandwidth, as Councilman Sweeney pointed out. We've only got so much bandwidth. What makes sense for us to look at next? Now, that's a little bit more of a mature spot to be in, but that's something that we're aiming for.
So, just for perspective, there's two major departments that are the oversight responsibility of the Finance and Budgeting Committee. And those are the Fiscal Department and the IT Department. And as a result of that, we've looked at the ERP almost exclusively through the eyes of the ERP department, through the eyes of the IT department, through your process of implementation and execution. But there's a whole nother way of looking at it, which would be to work with the various departments and to ask them, how are you perceiving it? What are you doing? What more could you be doing? What would you like to see? And I think that falls into the purview of Councilman Sweeney's Operations Committee. And so I think the ERP is advanced now to the point where it's going to make sense to do more looking at it from that perspective. So I invite you to do that and start looking at it both in terms of how the system is designed and implemented from the IT department, and also how the system is perceived, used, and how better it could be used from the perspective of the other departments.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, and I wouldn't mind your comments, Director, on that thought process of council operation intergovernmental. How's the functionality working with the other departments that are not the large finance committee responsibilities? And it's not to me, it would be to have a forum to have the dialogue on how's it going, because when you get started in Public Works or HR, your days go very quick. You walk in with a game plan, and a lot of times it gets all over the place. This will be a place where we can pause and talk about the efficiencies from the ERP and what benefits are happening, where can we do a little bit more help, that kind of stuff. Is that what you're thinking about, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You ever thought about that?
Well, so one in my experience, right, outside of public sector life, generally that's where the steering committee comes in. And so when I think about direction of ERP and I think about where we're going to take, where are we going to use our scarce resources to work on a project or work on an initiative, I think about the key players in the operational areas. I think about, who has a voice in where are we going to go as really as an entity. And that's where that steering committee comes in. And so, we've had discussions internally about who should sit on that steering committee. Now, when it comes to council oversight, I am way over my skis on where that should come down. I mean, I think about, what the executive needs to do and what we're trying to do there operationally.
Yeah, we're going through the chair, just from your perspective, which ones are using the ERP, right? And if you give me a list of, we know every department that's there through the org chart. Some have a significant, some have middle, and some maybe don't have any role in it. If I can get from you who and how much involvement they have with the ERP, then I can start deciphering or deciding on talking to the individual departments, saying, "Hi, we're going to have a committee hearing, and we're going to talk to 1, 2, and 3, or just one at a time, to see how the ERP is helping them with efficiencies and their ability to do the jobs that they're sworn to do and helping the folks of Cuyahoga County out." So that's just the thought process behind it.
So to help me understand from a civics lesson, does this include just the executive, or does this include non-executive?
Whoever uses ERP that we have the responsibility for to understand how they're doing. And are we achieving the results that were intended by implementing the ERP?
So
Does that
I
make
would
sense?
I would just comment that HR, fiscal, and public works are the three obvious places where the bulk of the ERP is being used. But my guess is that it may well be in some of the other departments where the opportunities are there, but maybe haven't been fully recognized.
Yeah, and I have one in my head at the end here.
Councilman Tuma.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through the chair, just a little, going back a little bit in time, when this first was proposed, the ERP, we did have a Public Works committee, and the Director Dever and some of the other assistant directors kind of explained what they envisioned with respect to the ERP. And I think from Councilman Sweeney's point of view, it'd be nice to hear after all this time, now that we actually have implementation of the ERP, you know, are they getting bang for their buck? Are they getting what they expected out of the ERP, and where are they at? And I think just not for Public Works, but I think Chairman Sweeney's kind of saying for the other departments that are using the ERP, just to kind of put it into perspective of where we've been, where we're at now, and what their expectations are, and are they being met? And that's kind of like from a nuts and bolts point of view, as opposed to maybe just finances, you know, alone. And I think that's kind of what you're looking for, Mr. Sweeney. Thank you.
Okay. And I know we're kind of running a little bit longer than what we had anticipated. So, okay, so answering the question on efficiencies gained, right? And I like to think about ERP in more than just, hey, dollars and cents, right? Because we don't have that baseline, and to look at, hey, how much did it save, I think is not understanding the impact of what this was all about. And what I've seen previously before coming to the county is a number of spots why there's reason to do ERP, and why we should be really, glad that we did it. And why just coming up with a dollar figure is not really the true measure of what we've gained by the ERP. And so just some things off the top of mind on what I've got listed here. And again, I'm not going to read through all of these or go into tons of detail unless the chair would like me to, but the first thing that really comes to mind is our data security, right? And every day we're waking up reading new things about where someone has been breached. I was just reading about the Washington, D.C. health system, and number of our congressional or senator leaders had their personal data compromised.
Not to mention the Ukraine information that
that's right.
got
That's right.
circulated.
So having the ERP in place like we do has helped us enhance our data security, right? First of all, we have the data on a modern platform. We have data with a modern operating system that we can secure this, right? In our case with our ERP, it's even with a third party that has a much greater team than we have to secure that data. So data security with this ERP, to me, is something. How do you put a cost savings on that, right? That's really tough. You can put a risk. You can measure your risk on that, what it would cost to mitigate a breach, and we do that through our insurance. But I wanted to highlight this as a really important reason of why going forward with an ERP and the work that we've done over the past few years was so important. But then on top with data is the standardization of that data, right? Instead of having disparate systems that weren't linked, having that standardized data together. Now we can start producing reports that are coherent. We don't need a team to try to say, well, an employee number is this in this system, and an employee number is that in another system, right? Which is the way it used to be. General ledger numbers are different. We couldn't integrate like we can now, and we can't produce that standardized data quickly like we can now. Compliance is something that also comes to mind right away. With a established ERP system, we'll see a couple things. We'll see first the enforcement of embedded automated controls. I was going through the audit report from years ago where we didn't have the ERP. There's a number of deficiencies because controls weren't automated. Again, not saying that the ERP we have now is perfect or that it catches everything, but we certainly have embedded basic controls in that ERP that should help us with our compliance. But more than that, it keeps us organized so that when the IT group goes through an audit, we're able to produce audit results, turn into the auditors quicker than we have been in the past. And in fact, when we look at where we're at today compared to last year, I believe the last update I got is we're about a month ahead of schedule. So I think that speaks to the organization of an ERP and what that can bring you. Again, I'll just glaze over these rather quickly, but the increased productivity, right? That, we've talked about that. We've talked in a number of cases about that. But that's something I mentioned too, that we're never done. We're always looking to make that system work a little better. How do you measure that in terms of dollars and cents? Tough to do, but it allows people, as you're being more productive, it allows people to focus on those higher value things. Visibility, talk about, we can see now into the system where items are, where are purchase orders. With integrated ERP, you have that information. Before, I didn't have that. I can speak from personal experience now. When I look up a PO, I know where it's at. I know where to go. I know what the status of that PO is. That's what this ERP has brought us. Again, tough to put a dollar figure on that, but it makes me more efficient. I understand what's going on in the business better. Scalability, what I mean by that is, can we scale? We just sat here and we talked about, hey, are there other places that we can leverage this? Maybe we can even think of greater spots. Maybe we can bring in, municipalities. Maybe there's businesses. Maybe there's, other agencies that we can put into this. Can we scale? And I think with an ERP like this, we can. Before with disparate systems, that scalability is just extremely difficult. With the ERP, we have laid a solid foundation for any sort of scaling. Mobility, our legacy systems would have been very difficult. We would have had to develop all that mobility, all those apps ourselves. This is coming with the ERP, and so I think that's a very positive thing. Again, how do tough to put a dollar figure on, but it's something that it's the way people want to work. It's in some ways we're saving people from driving back to the office to fill out. We can do it with their phone. And that's the way the next generation wants to work, is using their mobile devices. And again, workflows, I'm going to skim through these. Workflows, reporting, collaboration, flexibility, all of those are items that with the ERP make it easier. They don't translate in direct dollars and cents, but they translate into a more effective operation, a more effective organization. And we're seeing signs of those on every one of those. As I look back and I see what's happening, as I try to run my own department, I see these things happening, and it is making us stronger. Forecasting, I know that's something that is very important. We're coming up in the budget season. Having better numbers, having more solid numbers is going to make for a better forecast. All of this leads to that final statement. Why are we doing any of this? It's to bring better service to the county operations, which brings better service to our constituents. And I think when we look at this, dollars is one thing, but I think all of these items that I've listed here are others that are ultimately going to bring better service to our county.
So I'm going to go to Councilman Kelly first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't here when all this started. I'm the new guy. But this has been very interesting and informative, and I thank you both for this presentation.
Well, thank you. Very, very kind of you.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What does ERP stand for?
Enterprise Resource Planning.
Planning, not a program. Good. ERPs for efficiencies, and you said another thing?
Well, I think it's really, if it goes to this last slide here, I think it's all about providing better service, right?
It's about optimizing the operation that could use ERP.
Yep, optimizing.
And making some efficiencies. And you said, how much does our county council use the ERP?
Well, you probably, I don't know if you guys, I think council does not log their time. You're one of the few agencies that does not.
It's just on council operations. My whole thing is, efficiencies, and the one thing that is irritated me is our books. I didn't bring mine with me, but this is last council meeting, 888 pages, and it sits there, and it's all paper.
Yeah.
Paper. I'm not a big tree hugger, but I like to see as many as I can. And I'd love to figure out a way, because I did a little due diligence in Summit County, the only other county in the state of Ohio. They're mostly paperless.
Yep.
And it's something that I'd like to figure out how we can use this wonderful tool to be able to be more efficient, to be able to do our jobs, and maybe even have cost savings, because that's a lot of person hours and paper products and wire binders and stuff. So is that?
You're bringing a tear to my eye, right? I mean, I think that's absolutely a great place to look. Now, is that part of the ERP? We can talk about that, but clearly there's a spot to bring in efficiencies on these. I'm assuming those are agenda, that's legislation, that's
It's
everything.
It's all by code, but we can put it in a different format.
Absolutely,
maybe.
absolutely.
That makes
I
sense?
think we could. I mean, I'm maybe out of my lane here a little bit, but I absolutely think there's an opportunity there to streamline that process and to get it more digital, right? To digitize.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put it out to all my colleagues, and we'll get the general consensus through our council president, but that's where my brain is right now.
Love it.
Looking
Love to
at
be a
this.
partner with you on that. That would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Joe, did you have something?
Uh-oh.
No, I just wanted to add, it's a perfect timing for the discussion, as you may not know, but we just met with your staff. I actually have been meeting with them over time, but this past week, we got closer to identifying how to actually use the Infor system for the agenda management the creation of the agenda itself. Additionally, some of the items that you, Councilman Miller, have requesting relative to status of legislation, similar to just going on and checking it out. So the system we own is capable of doing some of those things, but Andy's staff is helping us kind of bridge the gap to get to that point. So we had a great meeting last week, so we're hopefully well on our way to getting to that point. Additionally, the electronic version of the paper agenda is technically already there. We have PDF copies that we email you or are available on the website. For you to actually see them up at the dais there, we just have to get you a tablet or a laptop so you can view it sitting right there at the meeting. It's just really council members' choice if you choose to have that.
Yeah, and this is through the chair to our chief of staff. The ERP is the discussion for today.
Yep.
Council operations is the place that I have the privilege of serving, and that's why this came out now. And you have to do the work anyways to put the books together.
Yes.
So it's individual council members. That's why I wanted to have a discussion with our council members to see who's interested in. If we all buy in, then we could have significant advancements.
Yeah, no, since it's coming up, I thought I'd come up because the back office functions, actually, we are using the system that's in place to pull that agenda together. So it's really the paper right now component and creating the agenda out of that system we're getting close to being done. But we can actually, at the next meeting, we can have an electronic version of the agenda available to you at your dais. I just wanted you to know that part, to start saving the trees, for sure.
And water then too, because we don't have to water the trees.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
So, Director, I'd like to talk about a little history long before you got here, which is that in 2017 when the ERP was launched, there was a business case made to justify it, and a good part of the justification was that it would save money and pay for itself over time, and that also we would be able to operate the functions of the county with fewer staff. it wasn't suggested that we were going to go out and fire a bunch of people, but it was suggested that over time, through attrition, we would gradually redefine the system so that with the help of the ERP, the work could get done with smaller staffs, and I certainly recognize that not all of the benefits are immediately translatable into cost savings, but I do believe that an attempt should be made to review the business case and to determine whether or not the system is actually enabling us to achieve the benefits that were put forward as the reasons for doing it in the first place.
So I hear what you're saying. That will take a fair amount of effort. There are firms that specialize in doing that. We'll have to look if that's, we'll just have to look at that, Councilman Miller, as to if that's something that we want to embark on. There will be a cost associated with that.
Well, I think that it's certainly a fair question as to what level of delving into that is, to what extent it's worth the cost and time involved. But I think there is information that could be gained in-house with a modest amount of effort. So we can think about it. Anything else from my colleagues? Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the follow-up with my colleague from District 1, thank you. Your efforts are very evident, and the presentation was enlightening, and keep up the good work, and look forward to continuing partnering with you.
Well, thank you, Councilman, and I have to say it's not me, right? I mean, I've got a team that is incredible, really. In many cases, they make things easy.
Yeah, and you never know what the question's going to be, because I'm going to say, hey, Chief of Staff, or hey, Trevor, Mike, I need this. And then all of a sudden it just comes and you have to produce it, and it's always in a timely and accurate manner. So that's what I'm thanking you for, as well as all your work.
Oh, thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, under miscellaneous business, if everyone could just hold on for a minute or two. We're not going to meet in 2 weeks unless legislation is introduced at the next council meeting. 4 weeks from now, on May 15th, I intend to have the first quarter update, which would have the actual financial information for the county through the end of the first quarter. It's generally available, well, easily within 90 days after or a half a quarter, within 45 days after the end of the quarter. So we would be at that point. Two other things that I want to get into. I had a discussion today with Councilwoman Conwell and Lenora Lockett and Levine Ross about diversity and inclusion and where we are, and the question came up as to how the biennial budgeting process could be improved from a diversity and equity standpoint. So I'd like to have some discussion about that at the next meeting. The second thing that occurred to me is that something like 70% of our costs are personnel related. And the conventional wisdom is well, turnover is bad. The more turnover you have, the more it costs, and yes, there are negative impacts to turnover, but there's also advantages when you have more rapid turnover. It creates more opportunities to fix pay scale disparities, to fix misallocations of staff and resources and such things. And I think from a planning perspective, it would be useful if we obtained some basic information of like what percentage of the county staff turns over in any given year. On average, how long do people stay employed with the county? How long does it take on average for half of the county's employees to turn over and be replaced with new people? And I think these kind of questions would be very useful from a long-range financial planning standpoint as we try to right-size departments, optimize allocations, and improve performance. So I'm going to try to get that started again on May 15th. So that's where we're heading. Any comments, questions, or other miscellaneous business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody.